There's a particular silence in a house where you have poured out your life. It's the silence of your own footsteps, your own breathing, becoming an echo of nothing. For 40 years, I believed that echo was the sound of partnership. Of a shared dream. I was wrong. It was the sound of an investment that had forgotten the name of the investor. Today, I'm not here to scream. I'm not here to shame. I'm here to tell you about the quietest audit a woman can ever perform. The audit of her own worth. My name is May, and for 4 decades, I was the silent, unsecured loan behind a very successful man. This is not a story of revenge. This is a story of finally balancing the books. My darling, let's talk about promises. Not the kind wrapped in rings and spoken before God and family. Those are beautiful, but they are the frame. I'm talking about the promises that become the very air you breathe, the unspoken contracts written in glances and quiet sacrifices in the dark of a shared kitchen when you're both so tired you can taste it. That is where the real currency was minted. In the beginning it felt like alchemy. We took our love, our hope, our 2 bare hands, and we spun it into a future. He had the dream, a brilliant, beautiful, demanding dream that needed feeding. And I had the hands. I had the hours. I had the faith. The promise was never a single sentence. It was a living thing woven into every small surrender. It was in the smell of the typewriter late at night, the clack 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 of keys forming his words, his arguments, his future. My fingers would ache, a dull steady hum, and I'd look over at him asleep over his books, and I'd think we are doing this. This is our sacrifice. Our investment. The promise was the warmth in my chest when I told my own professor no, I wouldn't be pursuing that internship. Not this year. Robert needs me. The promise had a taste like cheap coffee and determination. It sounded like the rustle of a paycheck, mine being placed into the pot for his tuition while my own library books grew dusty on the shelf. You see, they don't give you a prospectus. There's no ledger open on the kitchen table outlining the compound interest of your youth. You don't see the column where your quiet ambitions are slowly transferred into the account of his success. You do it willingly, joyfully even. Because the promise is the currency and you are both rich in it. Every time you bite your tongue when your own mother asks about your plans, every time you wear a coat for one more winter so he can have a new suit for an interview, every time you listen to him practice a speech for the 100th time, you are depositing faith. You are buying stock in the company of us. And he accepts it. Oh, he accepts it with gratitude in those early days. With tears in his eyes sometimes. He'll kiss your tired hands, call you his rock, his anchor, his blessing. He'll say, we are in this together, baby. Our time is coming. And you believe him. You have to. To question it would be to watch the entire beautiful fragile structure tremble. So you build. You are the quiet bricklayer, the unseen engineer. Your labor is love, so you don't call it labor. You call it partnership. The promise shifts shape as the years go on. It's no longer about tuition and rent. It becomes about social capital. Your time, your grace, your ability to host a dinner for his boss's wife. Your listening ear when he frets over office politics. Your management of the house, the children, the entire world behind the curtain so he can stride onto the stage unencumbered. The deposits grow larger, but they become so routine they feel invisible. You are no longer purchasing shares in a dream. You are now the infrastructure. The plumbing. The electrical grid. Essential. Unseen. And because it is love, you don't ask for a receipt. You don't demand your name on the deed. You trust. The promise is the air you breathe. It is the we. We got the promotion. We are invited to the gala. We bought the summer house. The language persists, but the feeling underneath it changes. The we becomes a royal we. It becomes his achievement narrated with your pronoun. You stand beside him in the photograph, your hand on his arm, smiling. And the world sees a supportive wife. They don't see the architect. They don't see the silent financier. I remember one evening so clearly. It was after the first big case he won. There was a celebration at a fancy restaurant. His colleagues were there, young lawyers and their bright-eyed partners. One of them, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, leaned over to me. She said, "You must be so proud of all his hard work." And I nodded yes, so proud. Then she asked, "And what is it that you do, May?" Just like that. "What do you do?" I opened my mouth and the words that came out were about the home, the charity board, the children. They were true words, but they felt like leaves skimming the surface of a very deep dark lake. She smiled politely and turned away. In that moment I felt the promise thin like worn cloth. I had deposited my entire professional life, my intellectual curiosity, my earning potential into the account, and the return was a question I couldn't answer with weight. But you see, you rationalize. You tell yourself this is the season. This is what the promise required. You made a choice. A partnership is about playing to strengths. He is the face, the voice, the talent. You are the heart, the home, the steady hand. The balance feels off sometimes in the dead of night, but by morning you've brushed it away. The promise is still there. It has to be, because if it isn't, what were all those deposits for? The real danger of this kind of promise is that it bankrupts you so slowly you don't feel the poverty until you are standing in an empty room. You have given away your time, your labor, your visibility piece by piece. And in return you hold these beautiful memories, these shared triumphs, this lovely home. But the title to your own life, the deed to your own time, you begin to wonder where you filed it. You gave him the capital of your youth and he built an empire. And you have a lovely room in the palace. But it is not yours. You are a resident, a cherished guest in the life you funded. You start to speak in we but hear an echo. You start to realize your sacrifices are now just the way things are. They are not remembered as sacrifices. They are the landscape, the taken for granted hills and valleys of his success. He walks on the road you paved and he doesn't think of the pavement anymore. He just knows the ride is smooth. That is the promise. It is the most valuable thing you own and the easiest thing for the world to forget you hold. Because it exists in glances and trust and the soft space between words. It is written on water. And one day you look down and you see your own reflection is the only thing left. You have been trading in a currency that only you remember the value of. And my darling, when that realization comes, it is not a storm. It is the most profound and chilling silence you will ever hear. It is the sound of the bank of us closing its doors for good. And you are standing outside holding a check written in your own blood, sweat and tears, wondering if after all this time it is still any good. They give you the first edition of your love story. You both hold it so carefully. The pages are filled with the same words, the same hopes, the same late night conversations on a sofa that sags in the middle. It is a sacred text. You know every line by heart. Then one day you realize he is holding a revised edition. The spine is the same. Color. The title is the same. But the story inside has been quietly edited. Words have been swapped. Sentences have been removed. Your name has been moved from co-author to a footnote in the acknowledgments. You are still holding the original. You are still reading from it. And he has long since moved on to a different book. Success, my dear, is the most powerful editor of all. It does not arrive with a bang and a rewrite. It arrives with a soft eraser. It begins with a single pronoun. You will be talking to friends and he will say, I had to fight for that verdict. Not we. Not even the case we stressed over for months. You hear it. A tiny pinprick in the fabric. You let it pass. It was a hard fight. He is tired. It means nothing. But the eraser has made its first mark. The edits continue and the stories told at dinner parties. The narrative of struggle becomes his alone. The tiny apartment, the ramen noodles, the second-hand suit. He tells it with charm, with humility even. But listen closely. In his telling, who stayed up with him? Who typed the briefs? Who made the rent that month? The character is vague. A supportive presence. A blessing. The specifics, the weight, the labor of you, those details are smoothed over. They are not dramatic enough for the hero's journey. You sit there smiling, sipping your wine. You are the living archive of the truth, but your voice feels like a whisper against the compelling new narrative. To correct him would be graceless. You would be the nitpicker, the one who cannot share the glory. So you swallow the true story. It becomes a fossil inside you. Your shared history becomes his backstory. The materials you provided, your time, your wages, your emotional fuel, are now just set dressing for his solo performance. The set dressing is beautiful, of course. It is the lovely home you made. The well-adjusted children you raised. The social calendar you manage that provides him the right connections. It is all acknowledged as part of the scenery. But the director, the star, the producer, that is him. You are stage management. Essential. Respected even. But not credited in the same way. The home itself becomes a museum of his success. The shelves hold his trophies. The walls display his degrees. The conversations circle his work, his stress, his world. Your world, the one you built and maintained to make his possible, becomes invisible. It is just the air. You will mention something you handled, a crisis with a child, a clever solution to a household problem, a thought you had about something in the news. He will nod absently and 5 minutes later circle back to the memorandum he needs to draft. Your contributions are atmospheric. His are monumental. This is the new topography of your life. His words are in bold. Yours are in a faint gray ink. You try sometimes to insert a page from the original manuscript. Remember when you will begin. He will smile a faraway smile. Oh yes, that was something, wasn't it? Then he will pivot. But the case I just took on now, that is really something. The past becomes a quaint prologue to the main event, which is his present. Your shared past is downgraded to a fond memory. His present trajectory is the important text. People who meet him now see the finished volume. The respected man. The accomplished professional. They have no reason to question the authorship. They see you beside him and they make an assumption. The lovely wife. The supportive partner. They see the effect, not the cause. They see the lighthouse, not the years of hauling stone. And he begins to see you through their eyes. You are part of his beautiful life. A cherished part. But a part nonetheless. Not the co-creator. The division is so subtle. It is not malice. It is the natural gravity of success. It pulls everything into its orbit and names itself the sun. You feel a loneliness then that is impossible to explain. Because you are not alone. You are surrounded by the evidence of your life together. But you are lonely for the original story. You are lonely for the person who knew you as an equal partner in the trenches. That man is still there, but he lives inside the revised edition. He looks out from those pages and he loves the footnote that is you. But he does not consult you on the new chapters. Your own identity begins to feel hyphenated. His name's wife, the mother of his children, the keeper of his home. The titles are true, but they are derivatives. They stem from him. Where is the primary source? You look for yourself in the original manuscript, but it is considered outdated. A historical document. Quaint. There comes a day when you realize you are speaking a different language. You speak in the language of we have shared history of interconnected roots. He speaks in the language of I have individual agency of personal achievement. You are talking about the forest. He is talking about the most magnificent tree. You both love the same place, but you are not describing the same thing anymore. The cruelest edit is the one made to your own sense of value. When your daily work maintaining the universe that allows his focus becomes simply what you do. Not a contribution of equal weight, but a set of tasks. A natural function, like breathing. You were not thanked for breathing. You were just expected to do it. So when you manage the finances, plan the meals, coordinate the lives, you are just breathing. And he is out there climbing mountains. How can you compare the two? The edited story tells you not to. It tells you his work is capital H hard. Your work is just life. This is the rewrite that gets inside your bones. You may try to reclaim a paragraph. You may start a small project of your own, take a class, volunteer in a way that uses your own name. He will support you. He will say, "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so glad you have something for yourself." And in that phrase you hear the final edit. For yourself. Not part of our shared epic. A side project. A hobby. Something to fill your time while he does the real work of the world. Your story is now a charming short story tucked into the appendices of his grand volume. This is how it happens. Not with a fight. Not with a declaration. With a quiet, relentless shift in grammar. From we to I. From ours to his. From shared to supported. The facts of your sacrifice are not denied. They are simply reframed. They are no longer the foundation of a shared empire. They are the helpful boosts that allow the hero to ascend. And a hero must ascend alone. That is the rule of the new narrative. You are left holding the original book. The pages are worn soft from your touch. You know every true word. But when you look across the room at the man you love, you understand he is reading from a different copy. And you have to decide if you will spend the rest of your life silently correcting his version, or if you will finally close your own book and write a whole new story for yourself. One where you are not a footnote. One where your name is on the cover in bold all by itself. I want you to understand the silence of that room. It was his study, a room of dark wood and leather, the smell of old paper and ambition. The books on the shelves were his trophies. The pens in the holder were instruments of his will. I rarely went in there. It was his sanctuary, the place where he built the world according to his design. I was only ever a guest, bringing in a cup of coffee or retrieving a stray plate. That day I needed a stamp. A simple thing. I was writing a letter to an old friend, a thing I did for myself so rarely. And I knew he kept stamps in the top drawer of that big desk. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums. My own footsteps on the polished floor were an intrusion. I felt like a ghost in my own home, moving through spaces I maintained but did not own. I opened the drawer. No stamps. Just neat compartments of his things: paperclips, business cards, a monogrammed letter opener. I was about to close it when my eye caught the edge of something blue peeking from beneath the leather portfolio. A corner of paper. I don't know what made me pull it out. Some faint instinct, a whisper from a part of me I had long since taught to be still. It was a bank statement. The paper was cool and smooth in my hands. The logo at the top was from a bank I didn't know we used. Our joint accounts were with First National. This was something else. Premier Private Wealth Management. And there at the top was his name. Only his name. Robert Allen Thorpe. Not Mr. and Mrs. Just him. My eyes moved down the columns. It was a dance of numbers I didn't understand at first. Then they focused. The balances. The sums were not for household groceries or mortgage payments. They were large. So large they seemed to belong to a different life, a different person than the man who complained about the cost of landscaping. There were deposits every month, regular as a heartbeat. Transfers from another account. Investments in things with cold names. There was a history. This statement was not the first. It was one of many. I did not feel the floor beneath my feet. The humming silence of the house broke into a million piercing shrieks, all of them inside my skull. Yet outwardly I was perfectly still. I could have been a statue holding a piece of paper. This was the ledger. This was the true accounting. All those years I had thought the betrayal, if it ever came, would be something hot and messy. A lipstick stain, a perfumed letter, a late-night phone call whispered in another room. Something the movies prepare you for. Something you can scream at, cry over, rend your clothes in the biblical sense. That kind of pain has a script. It has a rhythm. It has a clear enemy. This was none of that. This was cold. This was clean. This was the product of 1,000 calm decisions made at a desk just like this one. This was not a passion committed in a weak moment. This was a policy enacted over years. A financial secession. He had quietly opened a door and moved the most valuable parts of our life, our security, our future, into a room and then locked it. And he had kept the only key. The betrayal wasn't in the numbers themselves. It was in the thinking. The premeditation. The careful construction of a separate life, one built with the resources of our shared life. He had taken the compound interest of my sacrifice, my deferred dreams, my labor, and he had invested it in a fortress where I had no citizenship. Every time he had patted my hand and said, "Let me handle the finances, honey, it's complicated," he was not protecting me. He was excavating a moat. Every time he dismissed my question about an investment with a weary sigh, he was raising a drawbridge. Every quarterly report he'd forgotten to show me was another brick in a wall I didn't even know was being built. I looked around the room. Every object in it suddenly seemed like evidence. The leather chair bought after the big win, he said, was for us. The art chosen with an advisor I'd never met. The antique globe, he said, was an investment. Were they, or were they just more furnishings for his private kingdom purchased with funds I could not see or touch? I saw our entire marriage refracted through this single sheet of paper. All the talk, all the shared dreams, all the promises, they were the pleasant fiction he told me while he diligently, quietly built a reality for one. The deepest cut was the sheer ordinariness of it. This was not a crime of passion. It was a crime of administration. He hadn't fallen into another woman's arms. He had sat down with a banker and filled out forms. He had chosen financial secrecy over financial intimacy. He had chosen to make me a dependent in a story where I had been led to believe I was a partner. A dependent is kept comfortable but is never told the full truth of the estate. A dependent is given an allowance, not a share. I thought of all the times I had worried about money. The times I'd put back a nicer cut of meat at the grocery store. The times I'd darned a sock instead of buying new. The times I'd said no to a trip with friends because it's not in the budget this year. I had practiced a frugality born of a shared understanding that resources were finite, that we were building something together that required discipline. And all the while he had been sitting on a separate reservoir of abundance. He had watched me scrimp and save. He had listened to my careful budgeting. And he had said nothing. He had let me live in a reality of lack while he presided over a reality of plenty. That was the true violation. It was not just the money. It was the mockery. It was the performance of shared struggle while he had a secret exit. It was the way he made my prudence, my care, my collective mindset into a charade. I was the only one on the stage. He was in the audience watching the play he had written for me. I felt a nausea then, but it wasn't sickness. It was the physical sensation of a world dissolving. The foundation of my life, which I believed was built on mutual trust and shared effort, was revealed to be a stage set. A beautiful, convincing facade, and I had been living inside it, believing every wall was load-bearing. Now I saw they were just painted canvas. One strong truth could blow them all down. This paper was that truth. It was not a love letter to another woman. It was a love letter to himself. To his own autonomy, his own control, his own separate destiny. It was the ultimate rewrite of our story. In this version he was the sole proprietor. I was a favored employee perhaps. A dedicated member of the staff. But not boardroom, not equity. I placed the statement back exactly as I had found it. I smoothed the leather portfolio over it. I closed the drawer. My hands did not shake. My breath was even. The storm was not on the outside. It was a silent hurricane leveling an interior landscape. When the landscape is gone you can see for miles. And what I saw was a vast empty plain and a long, long road leading away from this house, this room, this man who had been my husband. The road was paved with numbers from a bank statement. And for the first time in 40 years the direction was perfectly clear. The anger that came was not a flame. It was too old for that. Too tired. A flame needs fuel and air and a certain reckless abandon. My anger had been smoldering for decades, banked under layers of duty and hope and the simple exhausting work of getting through the day. It had been fed by 1,000 tiny slights, a mountain of unspoken words. By the time I found that statement the fuel was almost ash. There was nothing left to burn with a bright hot rage. So it turned to ice. And ice is a different thing entirely. Ice is not chaotic. It does not leap and consume. It forms. It clarifies. It hardens slowly, molecule by molecule, until it is a solid, immovable fact. Ice is quiet. It is the silence after the storm has passed and frozen everything in place. That is what happened inside me. A great deep quiet cold settled into my bones. And in that cold everything became clear. I could see the shape of my life as if I were looking down from a great height. I could see the winding path of my sacrifices, the way they all led to his summit. I could see the little side trails I had started for myself that always circled back to the main road of his needs. I could see the whole map, and it was a map of a country called him. The clarity was breathtaking, and it was merciless. With this new ice in my veins I could think. Not the frantic scattered thinking of a hurt woman, but the slow deliberate thinking of a strategist. A general surveying a battlefield after finally understanding the true lay of the land. The enemy was not him, not really. The enemy was my own ignorance. My own willingness to believe the fiction. The enemy was the unexamined life. And I had just been handed the examination paper. I looked at my own hands. They were lying still in my lap. These hands had typed his papers. They had cooked his meals. They had soothed his brow. They had rocked his children. They had planted gardens and painted walls and written checks for his causes. They were capable hands. Strong. They had built a world. And for what? To be left outside the vault. The question was no longer emotional. It was a simple engineering problem. What is the load-bearing capacity of these hands? What can they build if they work only for me? The clarity allowed me to strip the sentiment away. To look at my marriage as a business arrangement that had failed. Not in the traditional sense, it had succeeded wildly for one partner. It had failed in its mutual promise. The contract had been breached. The problem was I had never seen the contract. I had only felt its spirit. Now I needed to find its letter. I needed a language he would understand. A language without tears, without accusations, without the messy history of love. I needed the language of law, of finance, of cold hard facts. I made a list, not a list of grievances. That was the old way. The fiery way. I made an inventory, an asset list of May. What did I bring to the partnership? Not love, not care, those were the intangibles he had already devalued. I listed concrete things. Years of secretarial work without pay. Years of domestic management. Years of social and emotional labor that freed his mind for bigger things. The opportunity cost of my own abandoned career. I translated my life into units of time and labor. I did not cry while I did this. The ice kept me steady. It was just math. Terrible, heartbreaking math, but math nonetheless. Then I went to find a translator. Not a friend, not a sister. They would speak the language of the heart. I needed someone who spoke the language of the ledger. I found Eleanor, a financial advisor with a small office downtown. Her eyes were kind, but they did not pity. They assessed. I sat in her chair and I did not start with my story. I started with my inventory. I laid out my numbers, my years, my contributions as I had calculated them. I spoke in a calm, flat voice that sounded alien even to me. Eleanor listened. She nodded. She did not say, "You poor thing." She said, "I see." And she did see. She saw the structure. She saw the imbalance. She saw the hidden account not as a betrayal of love but as a breach of fiduciary duty. She began to speak and her words were the most beautiful things I had ever heard. Phrases like, non-monetary contributions, equitable distribution, marital estate. She took the messy, painful story of my life and she translated it into clean, precise, powerful terms. She showed me that what I felt in my heart, the theft, the erasure, the injustice, had a name in the world of law. It had a remedy, not an emotional remedy, a financial one, a tangible one. This was the power of the ice. The clarity. It allowed me to separate the woman from the wife. The wife was hurt, betrayed, drowning in a sea of what-ifs and whys. The woman was a stakeholder, a claimant, an entity with standing. The wife wanted to scream. The woman needed to file a motion. I let the woman take the lead. I met with a lawyer. A sharp woman named Linda whose handshake was firm and whose files were impeccably ordered. Again I presented not my aching heart but my case. Linda asked questions that were like scalpels. Precise, clinical. They cut away the fat of sentiment and got to the bone of the matter. Who earned what and when? What assets were acquired during the marriage? What was the standard of living? She looked at my list of non-monetary contributions and she did not smile. She made a note. Significant, she said. That word felt like a verdict. A validation more profound than any sympathy. With each meeting the ice spread but so did the clarity. I could see the endgame. Not as a fantasy of him begging for forgiveness but as a spreadsheet. A column of assets to be divided. A settlement figure. A plan for my own life post-divorce. The clarity was so bright it was almost blinding. It showed me a future that was terrifying in its emptiness and exhilarating in its freedom. A blank page. My page. The ice protected me. When I had to be in the house with him, when we sat across the dinner table making polite conversation about nothing, the ice was there. It was a shield between the hurt wife and the man who had caused the hurt. I could look at him and see not the husband of my youth but the opposing party in a negotiation. I could hear his words not as intimacy but as data. Information to be used. The ice kept my voice level. It kept my hand steady when I signed papers. It kept me from seeking warmth from the very fire that had burned me. People think anger must be loud to be powerful. They are wrong. My anger was silent and solid and it was building a new structure inside me. A structure of resolve. Every piece of paperwork, every quiet conversation with Eleanor or Linda was another brick. I was not tearing down my life in a rage. I was calmly, deliberately dismantling it board by board and saving the usable timber. The ice gave me the patience for that. Rage would have demanded a wrecking ball. Clarity demanded a careful deconstruction. There were moments, of course, when the ice would thin. A memory would surface, the smell of his neck when we were young, the way he laughed at a dumb joke I made, the feel of his hand in mine at our child's graduation. In those moments the old heat would try to rise. Grief is a form of heat. But the clarity would return. The clarity would show me the memory and then show me the bank statement. It would show me the man who held my hand and the man who hid the account. They were the same man. The ice would reform thicker than before. By the time I was ready to move, it was not a desperate flight. It was a planned relocation. The ice had given me the blueprint. The clarity had shown me the path. I was not running from something. I was moving towards something. Something cold and clear and mine. The final act was not an explosion. It was a settling, a quiet agreement with myself that the life I had was built on a fault line and I would not wait for the quake. I would simply walk off the terrain. The day I left, I felt the ice in my chest, a perfect permanent crystal. It did not make me cold to the world. It made me clear-eyed. It allowed me to see my own reflection without flinching. To see my worth without his valuation. To see my future without the filter of us. That icy anger was the greatest gift I ever gave myself. It was not the fire that destroyed. It was the glacier that carved out a new valley. And in that valley I knew I could finally build something that would last. Something with my name on the foundation. There is a sound a door makes when you close it at the end of a war. It is not the bang of victory or the slam of defeat. It is a soft final click. A period at the end of a very long sentence. That is the sound I left behind me. It was the sound of my peace. I did not leave in the night. I am not a thief in my own life. I left on a Tuesday afternoon. The sun was out. It was an ordinary day. He was at his office winning another case, building another layer onto the monument of himself. The house was at its most beautiful. Quiet. Sunlight falling in perfect rectangles on the floors I had polished. The air smelling of the lemon cleaner I used and the faint scent of the lilacs I had arranged in a vase. Everything was in its place. It looked like a photograph of a happy life. A still life in a museum. And I was finally stepping out of the frame. My packing took less than an hour. I did not take the silver. I did not take the art. I did not take the fine linens or the expensive china. Those were props in the play we had been performing. They belonged to the set. I took one suitcase. In it I put the things that were mine before I was a wife. The books I had loved as a girl. A shawl my mother had crocheted. A few photographs of me as a child, of me with my sisters. My own diplomas which had been stored in a box in the attic. I took my paints and my brushes untouched for 20 years. I took my own birth certificate. I took the simple pearl necklace my father gave me for my 16th birthday. I took the woman I had been before the promise. I folded her carefully and placed her in the case. I dressed in a simple navy blue dress. It was not mourning clothes. It was traveling clothes. I looked like a woman going on a sensible trip. I looked ordinary. That was important. This was not a grand gesture. It was a simple practical departure. I made the bed. I washed the coffee cup I had used. I wiped the sink dry. I left no trace of my leaving. No mess. No drama. Just an impeccable emptiness. On his desk in that room of dark wood I placed a single sheet of my own stationery. I did not write a novel. I did not list the hurts. I did not explain the years. Explanations are for people who are still trying to be understood. I was past that. The clarity had settled everything inside me. There was nothing left to explain. So I wrote one sentence. It was not a sentence of emotion. It was a sentence of accounting. It stated a fact as plain as the numbers on that bank statement. It named the debt and it named the payment. I did not sign it, love. I did not sign it, with regret. I signed my name, just my name, May. It looked powerful there alone on the page. Then I put on my coat. I picked up my single suitcase. I walked through the beautiful silent rooms one last time. I did not touch the walls. I did not pause at the photographs. I was not saying goodbye to a home. I was walking out of a diorama. A very convincing museum exhibit titled, A Successful Man's Life. My part in the exhibit was over. I opened the front door. The outside air smelled different. It smelled of cut grass and possibility. It had weight and temperature. It was real. I stepped over the threshold. I did not look back. Looking back is for people who wonder if they are making a mistake. I had no wonder left. Only certainty. A cold, clear certainty that was more solid than the house I was leaving. I closed the door. I did not pull it shut. I did not ease it. I simply let the weight of it fall into the frame. It made that sound, that soft final click. It was not loud, but in the silence of that street, in the silence of my own history, it was the loudest sound I had ever made. It was the sound of a boundary being drawn, of a book being closed, of a self being reclaimed. A slammed door is a performance. It requires a witness. It says, "Look, see how hurt I am. See my anger." It is a demand for an audience for a reaction. It pulls the other person into your drama. It ties you to them with the rope of their response. A softly closed door asks for no witness. It needs no reaction. It is a statement made to the universe. It does not say, "Feel this with me." It says, "This is done." It is an act of profound disengagement. It is the ultimate quiet power. I got into the car where my friend Eleanor was waiting. She did not say, "Are you okay?" She could see that I was. She simply nodded and drove. We did not speak. The silence in the car was not empty. It was full. It was full of the future. It was a listening silence. As we drove away from that street, from that life, I felt no pang. No sudden doubt. I felt the way you feel after a long illness when the fever finally breaks. There is a weakness, yes, but underneath it a pure, clean relief. The poison is gone. The air is cool on your skin again. He would come home to that perfect empty house. He would find the note. He would feel a confusion first. Then a dawning slow as winter light. He would check the closet and see my clothes hanging like ghosts. He would see the suitcase gone. He would feel the silence. Not my silence, the one he had lived with for years and taken for granted as peace. This would be a different silence. An active silence. A silence that pointed at his own emptiness. The silence I left behind was not my absence. It was my presence finally withdrawn. And the withdrawal of a foundational thing leaves a void that echoes. He would try to call. He would send messages. They would be waves breaking against a shore that was no longer there. I would not block him. I would simply be unavailable. My attention, my energy, my life force were no longer public utilities for him to tap into. They were private resources. I had turned off the main valve. The calls and messages would be like tapping on a pipe in an empty house. The water had been shut off at the source. My power was in the calm. In the complete lack of chaos. I gave him no fight to have, no tears to dry, no scene to manage. I gave him nothing but a fact. A closed door. A balance settled. There is no weapon against that kind of quiet. You cannot argue with a closed door. You cannot reason with a settled account. You can only stand on the other side and face the consequence of your own actions. I left him with the one thing he had never truly had to face, himself. Alone in the beautiful museum of his success with no one to give the tour to. My exit was my final statement. And it was made without a single spoken word. It was written in the empty closet, the made bed, the clean sink. It was written in the calm on my face as I drove away. It was written in the peaceful sleep I would have that night in a small unfamiliar room. The statement was this: I am no longer a participant in this story. The narrative you have written no longer includes me. And I am not waiting around for a rewrite. I have started a new book. And on the cover is only my name. That soft click of the door was the sound of my freedom being born. Not with a cry but with a sigh. The long-held breath of 40 years finally gently released. The world believes peace is the absence of sound. A quiet room. A still lake. An empty house. I have learned that true peace has its own sound. It is the low hum of a refrigerator in a kitchen that is all your own. It is the tap of a single branch against a window pane in a rhythm only you will ever learn. It is the sound of your own breath in the morning, not waiting for the sound of another's. It is not silent at all. It is a gentle symphony of aloneness and every note is yours. That is the interest I collect now. I live in a cottage by the sea. It is small. The walls are painted a color I chose called morning light. It looks different every hour of the day. There is no leather, no dark wood, no shelves of trophies. There are books I want to read. There is an easel by the window where the light is best. There is a quilt on the bed that I made myself, stitch by slow stitch. It is not a showcase. It is a nest. And every stick and thread of it is mine. My days are not filled with management. I do not manage a man's calendar or his moods or his social standing. I manage the light. I decide when to open the blinds. I manage the garden, a wild tangle of flowers that would make a landscaper weep. They grow where they please and I let them. I manage my own time. An hour to read, an hour to walk, an hour to do nothing at all but watch the clouds change their minds. This is the dividend, the payout, this unbroken stretch of time that belongs only to me. He has the house, of course. The monument. I hear through the distant grapevine of adult children that he sits in it. That he wanders the rooms. That he has a housekeeper now but the food doesn't taste right. That the silence which he once called peace now weighs on him. He has the accounts, the investments, the separate kingdom he built. He can look at the numbers anytime. They are his. But a number does not keep you warm at night. A vault does not laugh at the sunrise. He has the artifacts of our life together, but the curator has left the museum. And what is a museum without someone to understand the story behind the glass? I have something else. I have the quiet that follows the final truth. There is no more guessing. No more auditing. No more listening for the subtext in a conversation or searching a drawer for hidden papers. The truth is out. It was ugly and it was cold and it set me free. The peace that comes after that kind of truth is unshakable. It is built on bedrock. There are no more hidden fault lines. My world is small and it is solid. People think starting over at my age is a tragedy. A shrinking. They see the smaller square footage, the simpler life. They do not understand the expansion that happens inside. When you are no longer living in the shadow of a giant structure, you can finally see the sky. The whole vast endless sky is yours. My horizons are wider here by the sea than they ever were in that grand house with its tall fences. My mind has room to wander. My thoughts are not constantly circling the drain of his needs, his wants, his silent judgments. They can fly, and they do. The interest is also in the small ownerships. The food in the pantry is what I like. The music playing is what I choose. The temperature of the room is set for my comfort. I am not negotiating my existence with anyone. I am not blending my preferences into a compromise that always somehow ends up tasting like his. This is not selfishness. This is the rediscovery of a self. It is the slow, careful mapping of a territory called May. What does she like for breakfast? What does she want to do on a rainy Tuesday? Does she even want to get out of her pajamas? The answers are simple and they are mine. I have forgiven him not for his sake but for mine. Forgiveness is not saying what he did was okay. It is not reconciliation. It is simply taking my hand out of the fire. It is ceasing to hold the hot coal of his betrayal, expecting it to burn him. It was only burning me. I dropped it. The forgiveness was the dropping. The peace is the cool, clean air on my unburned palm. So when I sit here now with my morning coffee looking at the water, I am not waiting for anything. I am not building toward a future goal for us. I am not maintaining a past image for him. I am present, entirely. The past is a book on a shelf. I can take it down sometimes. I can remember the good moments, the young love, the shared jokes. They are not gone, but they are not the whole story. They are one volume. I have written others since. The present volume is my favorite. It is filled with small, beautiful observations. The way the light catches the salt on the air. The weight of a good book in my hands. The satisfaction of a soup made just for me. He lives with regret. I know this. Regret is the interest he pays on the debt he incurred. It is the compound interest of his choices. He lives in the empty house of his own making. I almost feel sorry for him. But my pity is a quiet, distant thing, like watching a storm far out at sea. It cannot touch me here. My peace is my shelter. This is the final justice. Not a legal settlement, though that was fair. Not a public shaming, though he may feel that in the quiet questions of his peers. The final justice is my contentment. My deep, unadorned joy in my own company. The fact that I am not lonely. I was far lonelier in that marriage than I have ever been in this cottage. Loneliness is not being by yourself. It is being with someone and still being unseen. I am seen here, by myself, by the gulls outside my window, by the changing light. I am known here, so I collect my interest daily, in deep breaths, in uninterrupted thoughts, in the freedom to change my mind, in the silence that is full of my own spirit, not empty of his. This is what 40 years of investment has yielded. Not a lump sum of bitterness, but a steady daily payout of peace. It is direct deposit to the account of my soul, and the balance grows every single day. He can keep the house, the titles, the trophies. They are heavy things. My peace is light. It floats. It fills this space and it fills me. It is the sound of the tide going out and coming in a rhythm that has nothing to do with court dates or board meetings or hidden statements. It is the rhythm of the earth itself. And finally, after all those years of living by the tick of a clock that was not mine, my heart has found its true beat. It is slow, it is steady, and it is entirely my own. That is the wealth, that is the fortune, and it is all mine. So here we are, my dear, at the end of this story, and the beginning of everything that comes after. They will tell you that walking away is an ending, a failure, a door slammed shut. But I am here to tell you, the most powerful doors are the ones you close softly behind you. They don't lock you in the past. They simply turn you, gently and finally, toward your future. The world may see a woman alone. But I have never been less alone. I am in company with myself, a woman I have come to know, to respect, and finally, to cherish. You may be in the thick of it right now. In the confusing middle of your own story. You may be holding your own version of that bank statement, that teacup, that paved-over garden. Your heart may be a tired flame or a forming glacier. Wherever you are, listen. Your quiet is not weakness. Your stillness is not consent. Your calm is your deepest strength, gathering itself. You do not have to burn the house down. You simply have to realize you can build a new one. A home for your soul, where the key is yours alone. It is never, ever too late to cash the check written in your name. The one stamped with your sweat, your years, your silent faith. Present it. Claim what is yours. And then, walk into your life. The one that has been waiting for you all along. Go well, my dear. Go in peace.